So when is a role-playing game not a role-playing game? That's the question I kept asking myself as I was reading through New Gods of Mankind. Most RPGs have characters with stats, hit points, skills, feats, advantages, levels, and things like that. New Gods has none of those. You're a god. You only have followers. You get more followers, you can get more power. If you lose all your followers, you are dead, or whatever happens to a god. That's only the first of the differences of New Gods and typical RPGs. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? Well, let's find out. I'm Mr. Welch, and in today's Mad Musings, we're looking at Dark Skull Studios' New Gods of Mankind. Okay, first the boring part of the review that you know to come and love. New Gods was created in 2007 by Richard Leon and was playtested all over my hometown. I've actually played this game in that phase up at Horizon Games. Of course, they're all dead now. But I've had to refresh my memory about it because that was many, many moons ago. Enough with the history lesson, on with the game. This game is original, I will give it that. It's been called Populous the Role-Playing Game, and that's not a bad comparison. You play as gods, new gods, in charge of people at the dawn of mankind. You get to select your tenets, your domains, your holy symbols, and your holiday, and that's character generation in a nutshell. There's no stats at all. You start with 100 followers and 50 faith. Pick 4 domains. They don't have to be related at all to each other, though you can't contradict each other without a good reason, so making the goddess of love, beauty, slaughter, and saltwater catfish might need some explaining. Followers generate faith, and faith powers miracles. Your only way of increasing in power is to generate more faith, and that's earned from the number of followers you have. It's that simple. The book's layout is a bit strange. There's a fantasy world attached to it, but only one that's incredibly generic and honestly a bit boring. There are mentions about which of the nations support what types of creatures and what can be used as a starting location in the game, but that doesn't actually mean anything. They never explain it. Oddly enough, the layout is almost backwards, with the setting and the bibliography appearing at the front part of the book before character generation and the rules are even mentioned. The biggest issue people have had with the setting is that the gods are only in charge of humans. The humans are at a neolithic stage of development. We're talking ancient Sumerians or Phoenicians in terms of technology. If you're playing as the god of science or technology, you're in for a grind, because forget about cars and trains, you're still a few centuries from startups. The game proceeds at a snail's pace in terms of advancement. You're going to be in the Bronze Age forever unless the game master really wants to speed things up. So if you want a traditional Middle Ages RPG, you're going to have to wing it a bit. The only real mechanic you use is the miracle. You decide what the miracle is, calculate the faith cost, activate the miracle. Of course, somebody can counter your miracle, so it's a contested miracle, becoming a bidding contest, and faith doesn't generate quickly. You get discounts for your miracles in your domains. You get a 2-point discount for your primary domain and a 1-point discount for secondary. There's also a discount if you use a miracle in your holy season, so the trick is timing. Of course, if you're a summer god and the blizzard is killing your peeps in winter, you have to spend the extra points for going off season. Keeping your peeps alive is a major part of the game because they are effectively your life points. Combat resolution between other gods and other followers is about as simple as it gets. It's usually just a single die roll against the gods with some modifiers. However, as you actually can't permanently harm other gods or be harmed by them, most of the action is going to be done with your followers. Your followers on average roll a d6 for all resolutions, with a small percentage of them getting d8, as 10% of your followers excel at war, intellect, or wisdom. So use your specialists when you absolutely have to get a higher number. In conflicts with other followers, you both roll a number of dice based on the number of followers involved, and whoever rolls the highest die on a single die wins. Then followers get killed, lose faith, or get converted. That's pretty simple. One of the biggest differences between New Gods and other RPGs is this game spaces the actions the characters can take into seasons, so each turn is 3 months, which means you're only taking a handful of actions a year, but you're immortals, so single days mean little for you. That's the major reason why a lot of players felt the game was less of an RPG and more of a free-form strategy game. And there is a chapter on running the game as a board game, which I can say is something I've never seen in an RPG's initial book. The rules for empowering heroes and artifacts are in the game, but these mostly involve just making new miracles and having them last much longer than the traditional miracles. All they do for the most part is increase the die type for your followers. It's an expensive process faith-wise, but a long-term bonus if you plan on waging war or dealing with disasters. You can't spend too much faith on your followers, or else they become dependent on you, and if you don't spend enough faith, you'll lose followers and they start following somebody else. Budgeting faith is a major aspect of this game. There's a game world attached to New Gods, but you can very easily create your own. You start with 100 followers, so the starting scale of the game is very small. You create a pantheon with your friends, but going it alone is also an option. You really have to come up with reasons why the players are going to work together, especially if their pantheons aren't that related to one another, or worse, in opposition to each other. There's nothing keeping the players from just taking care of their own people and not helping out, especially if they've already spent a lot of faith and it starts to run low, because without it, all they can do is recharge. There is a faith and balance system to keep you from using your powers just to annihilate opposing faiths by slaughtering their followers. If you kill people with your miracles, you generate terror. Too much terror turns you into a Leviathan, which is like a Lovecraftian horror more than a god. It's the end of your character. You have to turn over the character sheet and then make up a new god. You can eliminate terror by spending it on minor miracles that are designed to cause terror, or pay it off with the new faith you generate on a one-for-one point system. It's a decent attempt to keep players from just dropping meteors on rival tribes, but if your people are under attack and praying like mad, it does make sense if somebody is going to try to kill your peeps, then you should be able to bring down the holy wrath on the attackers without causing terror. Turning an orc horde into those gimmick birthday candles that keep relighting right in front of your loyal followers should be an awesome miracle. New Gods is barely an RPG. It feels like a freeform board game, and it should have been marketed as such. The lack of traditional actions, the inability to increase your god's abilities outside of just recruiting more followers, and the simplistic dice system make it hard to play this seriously as an RPG. It's just not an in-depth system for an RPG. It doesn't work well as an overlay for other games. You can't use it to play Gods of D&D, for example. It might be an easy system, but it's a poor crossover for complex systems. If the game does sound like something you would like to try, the books can be found for list price on several sites, despite Dark Skull Studios seemingly out of business. That's it for Mad Musings. This game was a strange one because it didn't feel like an RPG, but it's miles ahead of the next review, the Leading Edge Games Aliens RPG. That was a terrible system that felt incomplete but overly complex at the same time. Get ready for lots of math and an experience system so unreliable that mutiny is a viable option for players. It's like those miserable psalms. They're so depressing.